Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the African Heritage Alliance YouTube channel. This time we wanted to introduce to you a really important topic that we have discussed at our latest public meeting, which is Black women in the 21st century. And this is really a celebration of International Women's Day, but it's also Women's History Month too. So we wanted to honor all of those Black women within our remit, within industries, sectors that are doing great things. So we had, as we said, a public meeting on March the 25th, where we had a number of speakers talking to this topic. The ladies shared their perspective on where they've come from and also the challenges as well as the successes they've faced in their career. So we had a really great discussion and debate. Uzo, how did you find the event and what were the standout kind of comments or highlights from the session for you?
I think for me, it was very interesting to find out who the women actually based as their role models. And as you would very often perhaps suppose expect with women, a lot of the role models were either mothers or grandmothers. But it also stood out for me that for one of the speakers, it was actually her grandfather who was her role model. And I thought that was very interesting because very often for our children, we often talk about role models, be it in schools, be it in professional environment. It's a very important thing. So really the experience that our children get from us or from our parents shows how much it can influence our future. So I thought that was rather interesting.
Yeah. And were there any kind of common themes from the event? Because I think for me, I definitely took some themes away. Were there any themes or any consistency in what the speakers said that kind of resonated for you, or you thought they were consistent for all our speakers?
Yes, very much so. I think this issue of having to work hard, work 10 times, that is sort of a running theme among, it's not just for women, but also for our men as well, for, African heritage people. That was quite a running theme for all of us. And also the kind of struggle, the initial struggle that each women had before they actually reached where they are today. So, and also not giving up, that came across very strongly. Despite the struggles, we didn't give up. We continued to get in what it is that we wanted out of life.
Yeah, I hear that. George, for you, what about this theme of struggle versus success? How did that resonate for you? Because I think we got into a bit of a debate on the night about how do you inspire your children, but actually at the same time, give them kind of a context of the world that they're going to be operating within. And so I just wonder what your thoughts were about that.
I kind of echo much of what Uzo said. And I guess the thing that kind of struck me in relation to the question you're asking me was there was a sense of, are these two things mutually exclusive? And that is, do we tell our children they should be the best version of themselves that they can be and just leave it at that? Or do we alert them to the reality of life? That is to say, when they start competing out there, and it can be as young as when they first go to kindergarten, when they start competing out there, there is a set of dynamics which is set up against them. And therefore, they absolutely need to be several times better than their counterparts. And whilst there's an implication in there that we're comparing ourselves with someone else, the realities are that someone else out there set the rules and how the game's played, and we are competing against that. And whoever sets the rule and decide how the game's played, it's always going to set it in their favor. And that's just the harsh reality of it. And I'd want to suggest, therefore, that those two pieces of advice to our children, that is to be the best version of themselves, is very valid. But likewise, it's also important to alert them to the difficulties that they will face simply because of the color of their skin. And so my conclusion on that is that it's not mutually exclusive. In terms of the general tenor of the meeting, I thought it was a wonderful meeting. the women who participated articulated so clearly and gave us a real sense of the struggle that many of them had gone through. In terms of Professor Iwobi, coming here as a qualified solicitor and have to clean out the vats at Walker's Chris to make a living, just really goes to say how deeply entrenched racism is in this country. I mean, sometimes forget that Wales is equally as racist as England, as Scotland is, and we must never ever forget that.
Yeah, no, I definitely hear that. I think for the theme that kind of came out for me is consistently all the ladies had a sense of identity. And so I think even the question that we asked about, what do you tell your children, was all about how do you give them a sense of their identity and empower them with their identity, but actually do it in a way that inspires them. And so I think nobody landed on the ultimate answer, but I hear you. I think there is a necessity to give your children some degree of reality of what they're going to face, so it's not a harsh shock when they go into the world of work. But at the same time, it is important to remind them that they can be the best that they can be, to understand who they are, to stand firm in who they are. Because I think all of our speakers, all of the sort of 5 women we had, all of them spoke about this sense of personal vision that they had for their lives and a sense of knowing who they were. Even though they hadn't expressed that in the world of work yet, they all came to whatever work they were doing with a sense of they knew who they were. And so I think the meeting was particularly inspiring because of that, because these women really did have a personal vision and passion for what it was that they wanted to do.
We shouldn't forget Linda Herbert, because she didn't have any children, but she was in many ways the mother of our communities. When we think about all the things that she's done for the young people, for the elderly people, and the way in which she pushed herself forward. And unfortunately, we lost her earlier last week. And I think it was a fitting tribute that Elvie Morton gave for her. It's a little bit of a shame about Elvie Morton's audio, but we will do our best to make it as presentable as possible.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I guess another part of that was actually this need to work together. How important do you think that is, Uzo, for women to work collaboratively and to come together? Because that came out as another theme.
Absolutely vital, yes. I think with any organization, with any community, and particularly for our community, bearing in mind where we are sometimes, it's very important that we do work together in all spheres, and especially with our, women. I very much hear what Mrs. Morton was saying. And also, as other speakers brought up, all of us have stood on the shoulders of people before us, and that was very, very, very also a common thread throughout the women. We've all, that thread of role models and also standing on the shoulders of people before us. That was very important.
Absolutely. So we hope that you really enjoy this, what we think is a really stimulating, inspiring session, very much a special for women and Black women in the 21st century. So do watch the video. Hopefully you'll enjoy it as much as we did. Leave your comments and no doubt someone in the team will get back to you. Thank you. So welcome first and foremost to this very special edition of our public meetings as part of the African Heritage Alliance, or AHA for short. My name's Amanda Tusaid. I am one of the co-hosts for this evening, along with my colleague, Suzanne Overton Edwards, who will be, I guess, guiding you through the events of this evening. So first and foremost, I'd just like to say, really tonight is about recognizing some of the great women within the Black community, as suggested by the name of tonight's evening. The evening tonight is called Black Women in the 21st Century. We really wanted to recognize inspirational, impactful, dynamic women who are doing great things within the community, and particularly within our community, the Black community, or those from the African heritage background. We know that we have an exceptional group of people this evening. Our panel is, I think, a stellar lineup. Women from all different sectors and industries who are all excelling in their chosen field. So I feel tonight you are in for a real treat. So what we'll do tonight is have a number of these speakers taking us through their journey, their learnings, their experiences, and really talking to the topic for this evening. So I think you're in for a great evening, as I've said. I really would encourage you to listen, learn, glean from what will be shared tonight. So I will first of all go on to just a few hand over to Elvie, Elvie Morton, one of our community elders and also a real inspiration herself in the community. Elvie has done many things. Tonight she's here honouring a good and close friend of hers who we've lost this week. That's Linda Herbert, and Elvie just wanted to share a few words, and we at the African Heritage Alliance wanted to recognise one of our very own Black women of the 21st century who's been a real stellar standout woman. Elvie?
I will just start by saying, may ever the days be gladsome, always the skies be blue, love be the faithful companion, friends be many and true. Linda was a friend with a capital F. She was a great friend to me and to the community, a stalwart in our community. She has done so much in this community, it will take me all night. I forgot all night. She had no children of her own, but the children of the community were hers. She spent many times trying to help children from being expelled from school. Quietly, she did that without many people knowing. She was a magistrate for many years. We had a little joke between us because Linda was a magistrate and I was a parole officer. We usually say she locks them up and I let them out. What's going on? So we used to have that laugh between us. Linda was the first treasury of the carnival. She never knew what the job entails. The first time we went to the auditors, we came away in tears because every time we collected money for carnival, we laid it up to the nearest pound. We got a telling off from the auditors because how does he know we don't take the extra that's left over instead of making it up to the pound? And we came out of there crying. From that time, every time Linda goes to the auditors, she even takes the foreign coins that people put in our collection things. Linda founded the Nevis Association many years ago, and she collected and sent many items back to our hospital to help with medical involvement in the hospital. Linda has met the Queen many times. The last time I spoke to her, it was so lovely because she was not well, but I played some songs for her and she was singing away and we both sang together. And I said to her, Linda, you still got it, because she was in the choir in a church. So she was a great singer. She had a beautiful voice. Even though she had a lot of medical problems, she was an inspiration to me. Many times I look at Linda and I have to say to myself, Elvie, get on with it. Just look at Linda. She's had so many medical problems and she is so jolly, so cheerful, always smiling. The community has lost an important part of its body. Many people don't know the work that Linda does in the community because she does it quietly without making any noise, any fuss or anything. She is one of the people that I will miss greatly because we always have a laugh when I phone her. She would say something to make me smile. Even myself, when I had COVID and in the hospital, and when I came out, she made me feel I will get better. I must get better. She was that type of person, always smiling. She don't take any notice of her ailments as long as she can cheer you up from your ailments. I must say that there is so much to say about Linda, but it will take all night. And all I would leave with you all to say for her, because she had a faith. Religion is a different thing to your faith. And I would leave these words with you all to say, may God's love enfold you and his strength uphold her. May his light shine upon her and may his peace surround her. That is Linda. Thank you.
Amen to that. Amen. Thank you, Elvie. Thank you so much. Those are beautiful words.
Amen. Thank you, Mrs. Morton. Thank you.
Yeah, it's shared for a really lovely lady. Every time you saw Linda walk into a room, as you say, that smile kind of came in before she did. So thank you so much. And we really do appreciate you and Linda and all of the contributions you've made for our community. You really were an awesome duo together. Thank you for that. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to my awesome co-host, an inspirational woman herself and a great colleague to be working alongside, and that's Suzanne Overton Edwards. Suzanne, over to you.
Thanks very much indeed, Amanda, and welcome to everybody this evening. It's a real pleasure to see so many of you on the call tonight. Before I start, I would just like to offer my condolences to the friends and family of Linda, and in particular to her sisters, Agnes and Carol. And our thoughts are with you tonight and for the coming weeks. And we are just thinking of all of you. Thank you. We're very fortunate tonight to be gathering to celebrate the month in which International Women's Day falls, but this is about women. It's a pity that we have to focus on them on one day because they're here all the time. They have a role in society. If it wasn't for them, you wouldn't be here. And in particular tonight, we are focusing on Black women, not surprisingly. We've just been hearing about an amazing woman, Linda, and you heard Mrs. Morton make reference to a lot of what she's done, but I know that that's not all of what she did. We're going to continue that this evening because we have 6 amazing Black women, all of whom have already made a very valuable contribution to our community, and they will be continuing that tonight through what they say to us. They will be telling us her stories because they're quite often untold. So I'd just like to welcome everybody this evening, in particular our panelists. We are hoping that Diane Abbott will be joining us. Welcome to Professor Uzo Iwobi, MOBE, and Claudia Webb, Member of Parliament, Dr. Konjo Girma, Tara Munro, and Sandra Pollock, OBE. These women have amazing stories to tell, and we want to hear as much as possible within the very short time that they have. So as Amanda has said, put your question in the chat, but also we're not forgetting our brothers who are here. You men, you have a lot to learn. You can learn some of that this evening. So you're very welcome as well. We're glad to see you. And so we will go straight over to Professor Uzo Iwobi, OBE. OBE, as you will know, is Order of the British Empire. Uzo has already said that she cannot stay with us this evening, unfortunately, because she's needed elsewhere. Her daughter is receiving an award, so congratulations to your daughter. And just to say a little bit about Uzo, she is the chair of, or she founded rather, the Race Council in Cymru, which is the equivalent of the Race Equality Council in Wales. But her background is a solicitor, barrister, and equalities practitioner. So Uzo, you have 10 minutes and the clock is ticking now. So thank you very much indeed. We look forward to hearing what you've got to say.
Thank you so much for the wonderful welcome, Suzanne. And I join you in extending my heartfelt condolences to Linda and all her family and to all the women here. I am so honored to be invited by my beautiful and beloved namesake, Uzo, and my cousin, my husband's cousin. I answer the same last name. I journeyed to the shores of the United Kingdom from Nigeria at the very young age of 23, and I had just married Uzo's cousin. I was a qualified barrister. I was called to the Nigerian bar, and I genuinely thought I would come here to practice law. And I went into the job center in Swansea, where we live, and met with the job center official. And she asked me what area of work I thought I might be interested in. I said, I would love to practice law. And having studied at the University of Nigeria and called to the bar, I only needed to do a quick transfer test and practice. And I said, I would really like to start with volunteering or even getting into the law practice whilst I'm completing the test. And she looked at me and said, what's your name? I said, Uzo. Sorry? I said, Uzo. It's short for Uzo Amaka, which means the doorway of blessing. Right. What did you say it was? Uzo. Gosh, you need to change. Don't you have an English name? I said, no. Well, you need an English name because nobody here can say that name. So I came in and Uzo, I left to Linda because it was a baptismal name that my Catholic parents had given to me. I wasn't pleased at all, but I needed to get a job. And she said to me, so what kind of job? I said, I said, I want to practice law. And she said, you will never get a job in the legal profession because you're Black. And I was horrified. I thought, honestly, that was my first encounter with anything called racism. That was my first time hearing that your skin color could actually impact on you. I was so shocked. I said, why? Because I'm Black. She said, yeah, nobody's going to give you a job. Well, 55 applications later and one interview with a Welsh solicitor who interviewed me for 1 hour, 30 minutes on all aspects of law, the legal theory of law, jurisprudence, and company law, then criminal law, then administrative law. I was thinking, where are we going? This is a civil procedure, job. And at the end of 1.5 hours, he said, gosh, you're very intelligent. I said, thank you. Does that mean I get the job? No, I just wanted to know what they teach you in those countries. So there was absolutely no intention to offer me a job. And I remembered just going back to the job center and thinking, this is not even possible. How can this be how people treat people? So I insisted on seeing the same woman. And she looked at me and said, listen, Linda, you better just forget that you're a barrister, forget that you're a solicitor, get a job on the shop floor and work your way to the top. I said, okay, which shop? She said, Tesco's, Sainsbury's, and stop telling people that you are a barrister. Don't tell anybody because they won't give you a job. They'll say you're overqualified. Nobody's going to give you a job. You have been trying for the past 3 months. You're not going to get a job. I was desperate for a job. So I took the document she sent. My first job, everyone, in Wales was working in Toys R Us, selling toys, and it was £2.40 an hour. I didn't tell them I was a solicitor or barrister. I didn't tell them I'd qualified or called to the bar. I didn't say any of that. And I got a night shift job from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. packing crisps in Walker's factory. I mean, if you've ever worked in a Walker's factory, you'll put myself and the other Black woman we were the only 2 Black people in the whole factory. And every night there was one job white people didn't want to do, and that was getting in the vat that contain the gunge that they spray on the crisp. I'm sorry, if you have interests and shares in the crisp industry, it's horrendous. The days that they sprayed cheese and onions, we could smell it a mile before we got into the factory, and no white person wanted to clean it up. So myself and this lady called Easy, we were putting that VAT duty every single night. I mean, I didn't tell them I was pregnant because I was told that if you tell them, you will be dismissed instantly. So here I am, expecting my first child, climbing into this vat, absolutely sweating buckets, cleaning it with chemicals, climbing, places with cartons, just trying to eke out a living. It was £3.60 an hour. And I remember the first time I stood up for myself and I said to the man, why do you put us on VAT duty every single night when you change the jobs of other white people here? Easy and I always get the VAT duty. Is it because we're Black? And he was shocked. He said, are you accusing me of racism? Well, I won't take you through it, but I got moved because I challenged. And in the end, I thought, as people got to know that I knew a bit about the law, that factory was exploiting so many people. They would bring their contracts, I would look at them in hiding, people be packing my crisps so that, I started a mini revolution in Walker's factory, but that was interesting. It was hard. My family faced racism. My children were the only Black children in the whole school. And at the age of 7, my son was locked in a toilet by 4 white kids who asked him to come and play after lunchtime. And 1 held the door and 3 kicked him to an inch of his life. He needed hospital treatment. They said they didn't want a Black child in the school. My daughter is a very gifted pianist. Uzo will tell you that my mother-in-law is a Jewish woman, and all the side of the Jewish family are all composers or pianists. Her own mother was a pianist, and my daughter got this talent for music and composing. And
so
she used to get
you have
A's.
2 minutes left.
Okay,
sorry to interrupt.
Thank you. So, the boys would come in, pick up her pen, take the stub off, spit in it and say, now go write your A's with my spit running down your pen. You black this and black that. My house was smashed at least 3 times. It took a lot of years for me to rise. I ended up applying to get a job in the police and began to tell my story. And I charged people to hear my story because I thought the racism that we're going through, my house was smashed twice. My neighbor who sold her car to us, after she collected the money, took a key to carve the N-word on our bonnet, a car she sold us. The racism we experienced was horrific, and my time is finished. But I wanted to tell you that through that pain and journey, I applied to be one of the commissioners to the Commission for Racial Equality in the UK. I was interviewed by Tony Blair's cabinet era. I was appointed by Ruth Kelly, the then Home Secretary, and I became one of those who challenged the way that race relations legislation is implemented. And finally, believing in yourself through the odds that are stacked up against us. They want to crush Black people. But I saw an advert to be a specialist policy advisor to the First Minister in Wales. My husband said to me, so go for it. The worst they can say is no. I was interviewed. Out of 81 people, I was picked. And I don't think it's because I'm the smartest. I think it's just because I refuse to give up. I have a strong faith in the Lord. And I believe that work hard, push hard, refuse to take no for an answer. Like a jack in the box, you'll be stuffed and smacked, but keep popping up. Because women, we are here to take the world. I'm telling you, we will never be crushed. Thank you so much for inviting me. And I'm so sorry I can't stay for the panel. I would love to stay. And I big up the wonderful women who are on the screen. I wish you all the best. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your talk. And I'm really sorry that you have to go. You might have disappeared already. I don't know. I hope that you have a fantastic evening with your daughter. So, are we inspired? I hope that we are. There's much more to come. So, our next speaker is Claudia Webb, MP. i.e. Member of Parliament, and Claudia was elected in 2019. She's a very loyal supporter of African Heritage Alliance, so we're delighted to welcome you again, Claudia. And just to give a bit of background about Claudia, she is a social scientist. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Claudia.
Thank you for inviting me today and for the excellent work that everyone at the African Heritage Alliance does. You know, discussions such as these are crucial if we are actually to combat the evil of racism, not just in Leicester, across the UK, but around the world. The topic we are discussing today, Black women in the 21st century, has never been more important. Just last week, details were uncovered of the case of Child Q, a Black young female 15-year-old who was invasively strip searched by police officers from the Metropolitan Police Service at her Hackney school. Imagine. This abhorrent incident encapsulates the structural misogyny and racism that Black girls and women are forced to overcome. The scourge of institutional racism continues to affect us in all walks of life, from police use of force to the disproportionate number of Black children who go to bed hungry. Yet I know that there is an alternative, and that it is possible to build a society around the needs of all its citizens and the principles of solidarity. It is vital that we celebrate our history, and I'm immensely proud to be a daughter of the Windrush generation. When my parents arrived from the Caribbean island of Nevis and they settled in Leicester, they made tremendous sacrifices so that they could contribute to our local and national community. And I pay tribute to my parents and the many family members that are on this call today. The mistreatment of the Windrush generation, I believe, is one of the most evil chapters in modern British history. And I've been campaigning for justice, including an accelerated and more generous compensation scheme. It is also essential that we fight for racial, class, and gender equality. You know, before I became an MP, I ran a number of equality rights organisations, including Bath and North East Somerset, Race Equality Council, and the Westminster Race Equality Council, actually the most central Race Equality Council at that time in the country, positioned at Piccadilly Circus W1. This gave me unparalleled access to some of the most powerful and largest institutions in both the public and private sector, and including the Metropolitan Police Service and New Scotland Yard. I also founded with others organisations like Operation Trident to tackle the disproportionate impact of gun murders on Black communities, and I became the chair of its independent advisory group and thus the public voice of its campaign to tackle the men of violence using firearms to protect a crack cocaine industry disproportionately impacting Black communities. You know, I believe that we have to celebrate our culture, and I have a passion for all things carnival, and I became the chair of the Reading Caribbean Carnival and was on the committee for the Yar Asantwa Arts, a centre for carnival arts and more. I also provided leadership and support of the Notting Hill Carnival when I worked as an advisor to the Mayor of London at City Hall. We must, I believe, also remember our heritage. And I'm immensely proud of my African heritage. Yet the true history of Britain's brutal role in Africa is often denied. This is why I've been campaigning for historical massacres perpetrated by the British Empire to be taught as part of our national curriculum, and for the British government to issue a long overdue formal apology and reparations for these atrocities. You know, Black women, of course, face unique challenges in public life, and I have faced horrific, violent, misogynistic, and racist online abuse throughout my political career. You will know, as the member that I am a member of parliament, the first Black female member of parliament for my constituency of Leicester East. In fact, the first female member of parliament for Leicester East. And throughout my political life, the horrific, violent and misogynistic and racist online abuse has intensified since becoming an MP. I've received threats to my life and safety. In 2016, a study by the Interparliamentary Union of 39 countries found that 82% of the women politicians surveyed had experienced some form of psychological violence. 44% had received threats of death, rape, beatings, or abduction, and 65% had been subjected to sexist remarks. Social media companies and government must work together to root out the epidemic of online abuse that plagues the online political sphere and disproportionately targets women. You know, I will not be silenced. I cannot be silent. We must ensure that women, Black women, and women from disadvantaged and marginalized communities feel empowered to engage in the political system. The COVID-19 crisis has shone a brutal light on existing racial, class, and gendered inequalities, which have deepened after half a century of brutal, unrestrained neoliberal policies. It is the women of this country, and particularly Black women, who have disproportionately been affected by 10 years of austerity. The Women's Budget Group found that we have shouldered a shocking 86% of the burden of the Tory cuts. When we look at the gendered and racial inequalities in the UK and across the world, we know that there's been an unacceptable breakdown of our social contract. We're facing essentially three urgent crises that 10 years of austerity has both contributed to and damaged our ability to combat. We've seen the coronavirus and the impact on our health, climate change, and crumbling social infrastructure, otherwise known as our cost of living crisis. Women, and particularly Black women, are at the forefront of these crises. Only radical solutions will address the systemic gendered and racial inequalities that we need women leaders with the strength and courage to recognize. You know, at the end of the day, when I put myself forward to represent my community, to raise my voice against injustice and inequality, I was not afraid to speak out and speak up, because my experiences come from my experiences of having grown up in my city of Leicester. And those experiences have borne me well to tackle some of the issues that affect me, because all through my life, from childhood to a young adult, I've experienced disadvantage, discrimination, and sheer heat. Not just heat on the streets, just going to and from school, but heat in every aspect of my life. And that means that you have to have the courage to move forward with great energy and resilience. And I believe, therefore, that when we put ourselves forward as women leaders, we need women leaders with the strength and the courage to recognize that our role is not to mediate the unjust system. Our role is to transform it. Thank you for inviting me to speak with you today, and solidarity to you all, and a special shout out to my family members. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Claudia, for everything that you said, and you've taken us through the national scene and also made it very personal and pertinent to Leicester. So thank you very much indeed for that. We're now going to move on to Dr. Komjo Girma. And just to alert you, you can see from the slide there that Komjo is a medical doctor, and she has been described as a very strict doctor. So I'm hoping that through your talk, Komjo, you give us a little insight into your profession. Thank you very much indeed.
I would like to start, first of all, by thanking everyone that has spoken so far. And in fact, I wanted to just pull us back to a couple of things that Professor Uzo and Claudia brought forward for me already, which is, I wrote a couple of things down, which is for the professor, she said, essentially her message I got, she turned her wounds into wisdom, and literally, started from nowhere and look at where she's got. The other thing I've heard from her as well is that, no one should define your reality. She defined her own reality. And that's essentially the two things I think will speak out to most of us on here, whether we are Black, white, women, men, everybody will have gone through some sort of journey. So my journey is that I'm an African, I'm a daughter of an African refugee. I was born in Ethiopia, and my family left Ethiopia when I was 3, as refugees in the 70s, ended up in Kenya. And my mother found herself with 5 children with no education for herself, but in a strange country where she spoke no language. But because she is all these things that we are as a people, she managed to put us all through really good education. And by the age of 16, 17, I found myself in Wales, South Wales, doing international baccalaureate. From there, I then found myself in medical school, Edinburgh, doing medicine, which again, I can compare stories to particularly what the professor said, but I won't, because it's really not what the negative things we face that should define us. It's the lemonade we make out of the lemons that should define us, and hence why we're all really here. We're very, very privileged people, I think, given that how perhaps the outside world or everyone else may perceive us. And so here I am now, a GP in Peterborough. I did not know I was strict. I don't know where that feedback came from. And quite feel very privileged to be on this panel. I think that my main message today would be just repeating what the others have said, which is define your reality, define who you are, what you want to be, and don't let anything stand in your way. There's a lot of positive, as much as life is about a journey, so we'll come upon a lot of opportunities, but we need to just grab every little one and become what you believe. I mean, it sounds really simple, it isn't, but it is. And then I'm not going to take the 10 minutes because everyone said what I need to say, to be fair, but I'm also going to leave us with a quote from Maya Angelou, and we will all know this, particularly if you're of African origin. Any African origin, any heritage, you will know what I mean. She said, every time you see me, I come as one, but I stand as 10,000. We're here, we've got here as individuals, but we know, and I'm sure each one of us can probably think about how many shoulders we stood on to get here. So I leave you with that message that here we are, but let's be shoulders for others too. Reach out in every direction that you can, because there's always someone you can reach out to. There's always something you can do.
Thank you very much indeed, Konjo. And just to qualify what I said at the beginning, it was a comment that I found about you online, and it was said in a very complimentary way, because it was clear that a patient had come to see you seeking advice, and I suspect in a confused state about their condition. You were very clear with them about what the condition was, what they needed to do to get better, and they followed your advice. And the person ended up saying, she was a very strict doctor and she saved my life. So it was said in a very constructive, positive way. So thank you very much again for being with us this evening and for your talk.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. You're very welcome. Right, we're now moving on to Tara. And again, thank you very much indeed for being with us this evening, Tara, because I know that you're not well, so that will be causing you difficulties. You can see from the slide what Tara is doing at the moment, but just to give a bit of background, she is a historical researcher and a curator in the context of museums in particular. And I'm sure that many people who are Leicester based will have been to at least one exhibition that Tara has curated, whether you know it or not. So we're looking forward to what you have to say to us this evening, Tara. Thank you very much indeed. You have 5 minutes.
Okay, well, thank you for having me. Excuse me. As they said, I am suffering at the moment, so if I get a little bit choked, just bear with me. It's absolutely a pleasure to be on this panel today and to give you a little bit of background on my story. I think I was kind of led to the path that I'm leading now by the parents and the grandparents that I have. We were clearly told about our Caribbean history and enlightened with all the beauty that came with it from a very early age. And I think that's probably because we are a family of all different kind of variant colours and hair straights. Some have got hair straights, some have got, you know, very, very, very thick hair. We're all different colours and shades within my family. So it was something that I think my grandparents really wanted to install in us, that we knew who we were and where we came from, and we had pride in that. And that kind of led me on the path that I kind of work within now. And through doing that, initially, when I went to university, I studied design management and innovation. And while I was doing that, the only thing that I knew was I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to do something that made a difference to the world and the environment that I had around me. I didn't know what that was at that time until I started on a project very early on with, it was part of LACAF, which was Leicester's African Caribbean Arts Foundation, and it was in parallel to the museum services. And I found that there was a really clear gulf, kind of gap between how those two environments with the community and the museums worked. And the museums and the kind of public organizations had no understanding of the communities that we come from, and were not able to kind of even understand, you know, the way we worked to a certain extent. And it was very clear that there was some real issues in how they navigate with us and we navigate with them. From that initial project, I was asked to come on. Well, I did go for the role. I'll go back a bit. Because I think it is important. Now, I was asked, I was working quite closely with the managing director at that point when I was doing things, kind of community-based things. And then he rang me up one day and said, Tara, there's this job and it's got your name on it. And the job was to come in as a curator, a trainee curator, and do my master's at the same time. And at the time I said, oh, I'm not going back to university. I don't want to do that. And he said, come on, it's got your name on it. Come and do it. Now, I went for this interview, but I tell people about this interview because I think these are the barriers that we have within our communities when we're going for roles such as these. I went to that interview, and within that interview process, they asked me to bring in a piece of artwork. Now, I don't know about anybody, you know, but I know with my family, I come from Highfields. I'm from a single parent family. I didn't have a piece of artwork in my house, and I didn't know where to find one. I had no clue what I was going to deliver in this process. You know, I'm sitting on a panel with 4 people in front of me, no idea what I'm going to do. Well, at the time, I ended up, and I think this is just more about my personality, and I don't think everybody would be able to kind of do this, because I took in a dustpan and brush and a can of beans. And I was able to waffle my way through and tell them about things like Andy Warhol and and explain why everything you see around you is artwork and whatsoever. But that was more about my personality. I think for me, I felt like that was a barrier. That was something you know, how you put a person in that environment. From there, working within the museum service, there was very clear divisions about how they treated me while I was in there, and still up until the last few years, very much being talked down to, very much being underestimated all the way through on my career within the museum service or working with those people. I have to be better. I have to kind of show my worth at every point, because they will always try and undermine what I do. And just before lockdown, I for instance was in a meeting about the Castor paintings, which is a national project that we're putting on at the moment. And I remember being in that meeting and always feeling, and I've used the word, what do they call it? The imposter syndrome, always having the imposter syndrome. But I'll say now that I don't think that's my issue. I think that's theirs, because it's an issue, and the way that they treat me, or the way they treat us when we go into those situations, that we feel less than. And I sat in this meeting, and I've been in 2 meetings prior to this with them, and I was saying about this project, and I mentioned a curator that I wanted to bring in on this project. And within seconds, they said to me, oh, we need to find out how much that's going to cost. And it clicked to me that I'd sat there in 2 meetings and not one of them had asked me about whether I needed a payment. And it was really clear to me at that point that I need to do things differently. I need to think about things differently, and I really need to hold my own, because my career now, opening up my own organization, I now have more qualifications and more experience than those that I was sitting in the room with. And I need to be very, very clear about that when I'm dealing with these people. But it's taken a long time to do that. So, Okay. So just to kind of round it off, over the last 6 years, we have Opal 22, and we started off going into community centres and libraries and doing literature projects and theatre projects and spoken word projects with young people, where we joined what they were learning in the curriculum and adding the Black history into that, adding the Black stories into that. And that was really giving the young people pride in what they do, because when I first started doing this, I found that a lot of the time all we were telling our children about was the stories of enslavement, and it didn't sit right with me. So my organization is all about giving the positive sides and talking about the excellence of our communities and what we do and where we move forward to. So anybody that knows, I try to put the fun into history. I try to make things as as enjoyable as possible. Anybody that was on the bus tour last year, it is coming back. We're going to be doing that Leicester's Black History Tour, and we will be dressing up, and there'll be music on the bus as well, but I'm going to bring food in this time. So I'm kind of forging forward on trying to tell as much about Black history as possible, and making sure it's coming from a clear Black voice with using Black practitioners and telling Black stories to the wider audiences, because it's something that I truly believe it's not just for our community. Everybody needs to know about this, and there's no history, no British history without Black history, and I'll end there.
Thank you very much indeed, Tara. You've touched on many very important things that are not just important for women, but are important for everybody in all communities. also made reference to educating our young people, which is critically important. So thank you very much indeed for that. We're now going to move on to Sandra Pollock. And Sandra has many functions, but I think she describes herself, and I would describe her as a people development specialist. Everything that she does has a focus on people. And she was very rightly awarded an OBE in 2021. So really looking forward to hearing what you have to share with us this evening, Sandra. Thank you very much indeed, and you have 5 minutes.
Right, hello everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me to come along, and it's an absolute honor to be included in such an illustrious and skilled and experienced, knowledgeable panel. Thank you. So I was asked to give you a little bit about my backstory. So my backstory, I guess, begins with my parents, who are Barbadian, and came here in the late 50s, like many, to hopefully make a better life for themselves. My sister and I had 2 children. My sister and I were born in London. And what I remember from my childhood in the family and the community was warmth, was excitement, was opportunities to share our food, our culture, support each other. That was always wonderful. What I remember from my schooling, however, was completely different. Going to school and, you know, I constantly have to forgive this teacher. I don't know who she is, but one thing that sticks out to me was that I was struggling with the algebra. I'm still waiting for somebody in the world to tell me the value of algebra. I still don't see the point of algebra, but I was struggling with algebra, couldn't understand it. And I remember the teacher had gone through the lesson. I put my hand up and asked her if she would mind going through it again. I must have been around 7 or so. And she just looked at me, made a face, and turned around. Did not bother to even assist in any way. And that said to me as a child that I was not valued. I wasn't important, because I would see teachers spending time with other people, but not the Black kids. And we ended up taking ourselves to the back of the class. Now, that is really an important thing. I mean, Tara does a lot of educating, a lot of other people in our community, has already been mentioned, educating our Black children about who we are and what we can achieve is hugely important. But that stuck with me, because at home, I would hear from my parents, and I'm sure many of you have heard this, my mom would tell us, you have to be 100 times better than anybody else if you're even going to stand a chance. So I grew up with that in the back of my head. So when there was lots of, in London, lots, I guess, all across the country, a lot of riots and that sort of stuff, my mother decided to take us, 2 little English girls born here, to live in Barbados. Now, we used to go on holiday. So it was important that for my mum that we had a connection with our roots. So she used to take us to Barbados and leave us there with our grandmother and aunts and uncles and all sorts. So we always had that connection. However, if you've ever done it, going to live in another country is completely different. I'll tell you about the culture shock another time. But I will always be grateful for my mother for doing that, because I can remember not knowing who I was as I was a child growing up in London. I didn't know who I was. I was Black, but I didn't feel I knew who I was in that sort of environment. And I was English, but I was told I didn't belong here. So who was I? My mother took us to Barbados, and for the first time, I saw, yes, I went there all the time, but it doesn't register when you're on holiday, when you go there to live. For the first time, I saw Black people, highly respected, having their own businesses, being well educated, and achieving great things. And for the first time, I felt that that was a possibility for me. Now, in class in the UK, I used to dread bringing my reports home because I was always somewhere near to last. However, when I went to Barbados, the reverse was the same. Year after year after year, I was first in class, first in every subject. Can you imagine what that says to a child? For the first time, I felt, oh my God, I do have a brain. And this is something that's important, that our children realize that they are bright, they're intelligent, and they can achieve lots. So from that foundation, I wanted to make my life count. Like many people, you know, I didn't go to university until recently. So I always had this dream to go to university, because being English, if I went to university in Barbados, so I thought at the time anyhow, I would have had to have paid foreign student rates. We couldn't afford that. So I didn't go to university until 2017. So that's the foundation. My parents always telling me that you can achieve more, you just have to push yourself. And through that, I've looked at how Black women in particular are treated, and I've wanted to make sure that whatever I do made a difference, showed an example. And that has been the main part of my work, although I have sort of woven that into both corporate work and leadership management, organizational change. And I've worked across all sectors, but also I've done a huge amount of work in the community, both locally, regionally, and nationally. Sat on boards, headed up national women's organizations. There's a lot to this story, so I'm rushing ahead. But the point I want to make is this, and it's already been said. Know who you are. Decide for yourself who you are going to be. And when you decide who you're going to be, educate yourself, find opportunities, volunteer, because you're learning lots of skills. And in the midst of that, look around you, because yes, there are some right stinkers that are people around us, okay? But on the other side of that, you will also find people from every camp who will be ready to support you. It's all about what you choose that you're going to look for. If you're going to only want to find those who oppress you, there are dozens. But in the midst of all of those, white, Black, there are people who will support you. And I'm grateful for those people who have supported me. We don't have enough time to tell you all of the journey, not getting positions, doing people's work, directors' work, when they're about 2 and 3 levels above you and not getting paid for it, not getting the recognition. But you can turn that around and know that it is also a learning opportunity. I think my time's out maybe, and I'm going to stop there, but happy to answer any questions further along. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much indeed, Sandra. You've picked up very neatly on comments that were made by previous speakers, but you've also taken us beyond that as well. And it's very interesting hearing about your experience of the British education system in comparison to the very positive and constructive experience that you had in Barbados. So thank you very much indeed for sharing that. Right. That has given you a few extra seconds to think about those amazing questions, which I know you have to ask. And prayed in sacred place.